Hi, I'm Beth Pinsker. I am a journalist. I am a certified financial planner, and I have a new book out called My Mother's Money, A Guide to Financial Caregiving.
I loved your book. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote it.
So I got that call that everybody gets from my mom that she, was going to have a big surgery on her back, and could I come help her? Um, you know, Everybody gets that call at some point or another.
Hmm.
Time stops and you have to go help. I happened to be a retirement columnist when that happened for Market Watch, and it was the only thing I could focus on, right? So, like, I'm sitting there at her bedside. I have a column due. I'm like, what am I going to write about? I'm
Yeah,
going to write about this. And so I started to write about the obstacles I faced when caring for my mom, mostly from a financial standpoint. And
right.
they really hit home. And I realized that meaning me, didn't have a resource to go to for the answers to these questions that put them all together. So this book is kind of like my unified field theory for financial caregiving, and I call it that because estate planning turns people off. And I
Yes,
think that this is all about making life easier for the people you love. And
right.
that is a form of caregiving, not about control or taxes or anything like that. The things my mother did made my life easier. And so
Right.
I wanted to narrate a story about what I went through from that phone call until filing my mom's tax return after she died.
You wrote the book from the adult daughter's perspective,
Yes.
and I read the book as the mother and not wanting to potentially leave a mess for my grown children. First of all, how old was your mother?
My mom was 76, and I
So
actually
she died.
wrote the book from that perspective too because I have kids. I'm sandwich generation, and
Yeah.
I have to take, everything that I did for my mom opened my eyes to the fact that somebody's going to have to do this for me one day. Dad died 5 years before my mom, so she had been solo for 5 years. I'm a
Hmm.
divorced person. I'm also a solo adult, although I am recoupled, just not remarried. Um,
Right.
and life is complicated for single adults.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. I was shocked by two things. As someone who's almost 65, and I think I'm in great health, and I'm very active, but I was shocked by the high cost of medical care beyond what Medicare plans cover.
Yeah,
And I was also shocked by the high cost of home health care or nursing home care if we need it.
yeah.
Okay, and maybe I'm also in the camp of somebody who has not sufficiently planned for these expenses. So I don't think I'm unusual. Am I unusual as someone who's not planned?
No, not at all. And you're not unusual to be shocked. I mean, I'm somebody who's been frugal her whole life, and the amount of money that my mom was spending per month when she needed care was just mind-boggling. The checks, they just kept going out, one after the other. It was, I don't know, like I couldn't handle it. And sometimes the money had to come out of my account. And, there were big sums that I had to lay out, knowing I would get the money back eventually. But, like one of the checks I had to write was $6,000 because
Mm,
she was late on her long-term care insurance paperwork, and they needed a premium to keep the policy going. And so,
mm.
in emergency mode, I had to write out a check for a large sum of money. I don't have that kind of money floating around.
Yeah. And
Um,
did your mother have the money and it just was too hard to access or?
Well, because that was at the beginning of her illness, and as a single adult, I was not authorized. She was in charge of her own
Mm,
life. She was perfectly fine to do all of that before she got sick. And when I stepped in, I hadn't activated the power of attorney. I hadn't gone to the bank yet and done these things. I hadn't, um, gone to the credit card companies and gotten to be an authorized user on her account. There was one time I was home from the hospital late, and I just wanted to watch TV and eat junk food. And her cable box wasn't working, and I needed to call the cable company to reboot the box. I couldn't even do that.
Yeah.
Like there's just so much you cannot do for another human being unless you are specifically legally authorized and you've activated those powers. Some people, like, I think the number one misconception about all of this is that Medicare will take care of it. And I
Yes.
have a sidebar in my book of answers you don't want to hear about Medicare.
So you brought up long-term care insurance, which your mother had, and I'm curious because I remember hearing about long-term care insurance a long time ago and kind of dismissing it because it didn't seem to be a good way to spend money. But I'm wondering now if we have not to this date sufficiently planned for these expenses, is there anything we can do? For example, does it make sense for a 65-year-old person in good health to buy long-term care insurance?
The numbers are hard on long-term care insurance. My mom bought a policy, you know, 30 years before she used it. I don't know if I'm getting the math right on that, but some large number
Yeah,
of years before she used it. And
right.
um, it was expensive still, but she ended up getting out more than she paid in. And you can guess what happened to the company that was paying out more than people were paying in. It went out of business. So I got a
You're
policy through work. I worked for a company that was, through corporate ownership and had a piece of a long-term care company, and they offered it as an employee benefit, and it was portable. And I was
mm.
30, and after experiencing what I did with my family, um, I jumped on it, and it now is up to $60 a month for long-term care insurance. But if you are
Mm.
65 and you're just starting out, it's going to be thousands of dollars to get a policy. And so I have a formula in the book that you can follow. It's a little complicated to talk out, but you need to figure out what your potential long-term care costs are in the future, then discount that for today's dollars.
This is really scary to me. I
Yeah.
mean, to tell you the truth, it's very scary because I don't want anybody to go broke taking care of me in my old age. Um, but I can't afford that.
Yeah, nobody can afford that.
So what do we do? Is there anything we can do except for just eat better and go jogging?
Yeah, no, there's a lot to be said for that. There's all sorts of resources out there to seek out better health outcomes. You need to know, one of the key things I point out in my book is you need to know what your risk factors are. My grandfather had early Alzheimer's. We thought my mom was at risk for early Alzheimer's. Therefore, that's why she got the long-term care policy, because Alzheimer's and other cognitive decline um, illnesses are really, really expensive because the body is fine. It's the mind that goes.
You mentioned this husband and wife who got divorced and Medicaid. Aren't you punished if you get remarried because isn't your spouse responsible for it? So
Yeah.
that's one check mark against getting remarried at a certain age
Yes.
because if one of you gets sick, the other one is responsible financially. You can't.
Yes. There are spousal exceptions for certain assets, though. So, like, a lot of people worry about, if one spouse needs to go into a nursing facility, the other spouse always worries about losing the house.
Right.
Um, but there are protections for those things. And generally, the well spouse is okay in that circumstance. And if you are down to one like down to one person, that's where a Medicaid asset protection trust comes in. That's when you transfer your assets into a trust, like the house and maybe a brokerage account or something, and you have a trustee take care of it, probably, an adult child. And that adult child will manage those assets for you. They don't technically belong to you anymore because they're in the trust, but they're for your benefit.
Okay. So, because I think a lot of us think, oh, we want to leave stuff for our kids for sure.
Yeah.
But the point is, we need to have enough to take care of ourselves. And we might be lucky if, it's not a bad thing if we don't leave anything to our kids because that means that we that we didn't have
Yeah.
to rely on them to pay for our expenses.
Yeah. Or like I inherited some money from my mother, but the only reason I got it is because she died really young.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel terribly guilty. Every time I look at the bank account and I'm like, that's money that mom would have spent on herself. By all rights, she should have, but she died
Yeah.
very young, and now it's mine, and it feels like like dirty drug money.
Oh, I'm
You know,
sorry. I'm sorry you feel like that.
like you either get left with nothing, and you're either grateful for the time you had, or there's some people who fight with siblings over
Oh,
what's left, and I say, why are you fighting about this stuff?
I want to talk a little bit about spouses and grown kids because a lot of people, 50 and older, are in relationships where they have adult children from previous
Yeah.
relationships. I want to talk about the understandings around the spouse's rights, I guess,
Yes.
compared to the adult children's rights. Do
Yes.
spouses always supersede adult children?
No. It
Okay.
depends. I mean, well, the financial answer is always it depends. But if you set things up and make a plan, then you can have the money pass whatever way you've set it up. If you make no plan, then the spouse is usually by the court hierarchy, um, the spouse will usually inherit the bulk of somebody's assets first.
Okay.
Um, so
And
if
how about, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think of a
yeah,
nuance. So if, let's say I'm married and I have in writing that my estate goes to my kids, but then I need to tap into that estate to pay for my health care because my now husband doesn't want to use his funds. Is he able to do that?
I would think so. And there are ways, there are easy ways. I mean, common trusts, uh, a common trust structure is to put a pool of money or assets into a trust. And then you are the grantor. So you are the beneficiary of that trust while you're still alive. I know the beneficiary is probably the wrong word to use there, but the
Yeah.
trust can be used for your benefit. And then
Okay.
the remainder goes to your children after you've died. And you can
Right.
set those up. The most common way we see it is, um, I don't want to use common gender tropes because I'm against that. But you have an aging couple, right? And
Mhm.
the older spouse is the primary breadwinner, and he has married a much younger spouse
Mm.
for a second spouse. It's really hard to do this without using gender language.
No, and it's okay. I understand about, but
Yeah.
let's just say it.
So
Let's just use it. Yeah.
so the primary breadwinner has two adult children, who may or may not be the same age as the spouse, or even older. And this is an example from the book. And this is like, we get letters about this all the time. It's the evil step parent trope, right? So
Yeah.
either the money is going to the children through a trust and bypassing the current spouse, and the current spouse is mad that the children are kicking her out of the house or whatnot, or the money passes to the current spouse and bypasses the adult children who are like, that's my mom's money, that's my grandparents' money from my mom's side. Why is it going to the current spouse? Um, a big example I use in the book is from a teen show on Netflix called The Summer I Turned Pretty. And my kids got me into watching this, God help us all. Um, but the whole second season revolves around this scenario. These are the kind of things, the permutations in a blended family, that they're maddening, but you have to think them through. If you
Yeah.
have a couple in a second marriage and you don't define where those assets go, they're going to pass to the living spouse, and then that
Right.
spouse can do whatever they want with them. It's
Hmm.
particularly tricky politically these days in same sex couples, because you may be married and you may have that full legal spousal authority. You go in the wrong state, in the wrong hospital, and they may not be respectful of that, even if it's against the law, and the laws might change. It's best, even if you're a married couple, fully legally, no matter what your status, no matter your gender, your orientation, whatever it is, just it's better to have everything in writing.
Right. And I was going to say, it really speaks to planning ahead because, in your example, the two kids prevailed upon the mother to change the healthcare proxy. But if she had been in a position where she was unable to communicate,
Right.
her spouse would have been able to keep doing whatever he was doing or not doing.
Right. Well, there's
So,
always the courts at the end of the day. If
mm,
the children thought that the husband was being abusive, you can go to court and petition for guardianship over a person, and present evidence that the current guardian, the current person making decisions, is not doing a good job. And I have a booklet on my desk of court cases of that sort. My mother was able
right.
to make all of her own medical decisions throughout her illness. We were never
You're
really
lucky.
called upon to make any significant medical, the biggies.
Yeah.
I mean, you have children, but there are a lot of solo agers out there who do not have children, who are not
Yeah.
they're either widowed or they were never married. There are 23 million of those people out there in this country. And
Mm,
if some people have children, but those children aren't capable of the task. There are professionals you can hire, and sometimes you know, um, it's the case where, like, say I didn't have kids and I wanted to name my brother as my executor, but my brother's older than me. So he could presumably die before I do, and then what happens,
right.
right? So you name a trust company as a successor trustee, if your children can't do it, or your relative can't do it, or a friend, or you name them as the primary trustee, and then you make a deal with them. They either work by the hour when the engagement starts, like you pay them the setup fee, the onboarding fee, and then when you die, then money comes out of your estate to pay them. Or you work with a company that like I hired this X company, trust company, and then whoever is on duty at that time takes over.
This brings me to my next question, which is I think a lot of older people put off estate planning because estate implies that we have stuff
Yes.
and also it sounds expensive. So,
Yes.
but you're saying there are resources out there and estate does not necessarily mean the mansion on the hill.
Yes. So I like to put it this way. We are all connected to the grid of civil society in some way. And when you die, even if you have a negative bank balance, somebody has to turn out the lights when you go, right? Like
Hmm.
nobody just gets off clean and dies and has no connection to humanity.
Right.
Somebody has to like somebody at least has to sign off on where you're going to be buried, and like sign the death. Like you need people involved in this process after you're gone. Like
Hmm.
if you die with nothing or less than nothing, it's even more complicated than dying with something. My job as a parent is to make that as easy as possible for my kids as I can make it. Just as my mom tried her hardest to make it easier for me. And it's an act of love at that point. It's not, estate planning because, you want to leave your Newport mansion to somebody. It's
Yeah.
financial caregiving because you don't want your kids to have to do hard stuff, and or your nephew or whoever it is that you leave anything to. It's less expensive to do it beforehand than to do it after.
You had a chart in the
Yeah.
book, which I thought was really interesting. It's like if you plan ahead, it's going to be a lot cheaper than if you don't.
And faster, right? It's faster.
Yes,
I have
yeah.
a chart in my book of, like, if you leave a house to somebody, like you own a house, what's going to happen to it after you die? If you put it in a trust, it passes immediately. If you put it in your will, it's going to take a year before the whoever inherits it can, sell it, do anything with it because they have to clear probate first. Um, if you don't make a plan for it, it's going to take 2 years, definitely more than a year because you have to go to probate first to get an executor named.
You have two pieces of advice in the book, which I think are really especially great. One is set up a full aging plan until the end of life and create a death file. So,
Yeah.
real quick, what is a full aging plan until the end of life?
Well, you just, you need to map out what's going to happen to you, where you want to go, what your parameters are, who's on call to take care of you. Do you want to stay in your house? Do you want to move? Do you want to go to a nursing home? Do you want to, stay at home with health aides? Do you want a do not resuscitate order? Do you want a no intubation order? All of these decisions. You should think them out and tell somebody because they're not going to
Okay.
know if you don't. And then your death file is all the. You need to make it easy for people to find your important documents, your birth certificate, your social security card, your where your bank accounts are, your life insurance
Your
statement.
passwords to your
Yes, yes.
social media or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to make it easy for somebody. You need to put all that stuff together, and sooner rather than later, because you never
You
you
never
never
know.
know.
I love your book. I recommend it
Thank
to
you.
anybody. And I like it that it's kind of a workbook too. You've got
Yeah.
like places to write notes and charts. And is there anything else we need to know?
If there is something that I didn't cover in the book or a particular circumstance you're having that you want help with, I solicit for questions on my website. There's a ask a on bethpinsker.com. There's an ask a question button, and I am going to be answering those questions either in on my website or in my Market Watch column. And
Perfect.
hopefully, we'll keep the conversation going.